She had expected the bench to be empty. 19 days is long enough for a person to give up on someone. It is long enough for a bench by the outer viewport of docking ring 4 to become, again, just a bench. Commander Myra Osai had run the numbers on the transport back. Not the mission numbers, those were already filed, but the other numbers, the ones nobody put in a report. 19 days. 4 false extraction windows. 1 calm blackout that lasted 61 hours because the relay satellite over Kessen's reach took a micrometeor hit at the worst possible angle. She had told him 6 days. She had been gone 19. Ilias Voss was sitting exactly where she had left him. Not near the bench. Not at a similar bench, 3 rings over, close enough to claim consistency. The same bench, the same end of it, his left shoulder still angled toward the viewport the way it had been angled when she'd kissed him goodbye and told him 6 days, like he hadn't so much as shifted his weight in over 2 weeks. The first thing she noticed, before she noticed him, was that his mug was still there. Third shift mess only issued the gray ceramic mugs. The one station crew joked were unbreakable because nobody had managed it yet, and there was one sitting on the deck by his left boot, empty. A thin brown ring dried into the bottom of it. That mug did not belong to 19 days ago. That mug belonged to this morning. She stopped at the top of the ramp, still in her flight suit, still carrying the recycled air of a transport that had not been built for comfort, and did the thing she always did before letting herself feel anything. She catalogued the evidence. The mug, refilled that morning, meant someone was bringing it to him. The station tunic he wore, not his engineering coveralls, meant he was off shift, and had been off shift long enough that Petty Officer Grunwald, whose job it technically was, had stopped assigning him work near the ring. There was a second mug now, empty too. Someone had been sitting with him. She let herself feel it after that. "You're supposed to yell at me," she said, when she was close enough that he could hear her over the recyclers. "That's the arrangement. I come back late, you yell, we're even." He looked up. He did not stand fast, the way people do when they've been waiting and trying not to look like they've been waiting. He stood the way a person stands when getting up is simply the next thing that happens, unhurried, because there had never been any doubt about which direction the next 19 days were going to bend. "I wasn't going to yell," he said. "I did consider it. I decided against it around day 4. Day 4? Day 4 was when I stopped assuming the blackout meant anything specific." He said it the way he said everything technical, flat, exact, like he was reading a spec sheet instead of 19 days of not knowing whether the woman he loved was alive. After that, it was just waiting. Waiting doesn't need yelling, it needs a bench. She looked down at the mug again because it was easier than looking at him. "How many mugs?" she said. "I don't count them." "Ilias." 41, he said without hesitation, which told her he had, in fact, counted them, and had simply decided that pretending not to was a kindness he owed her before she asked. He had, she learned later, not that day, later in pieces, the way you learn most things about someone you love, moved almost nothing else in his life for 19 days. He had gone to shift. He had eaten. He had slept in their quarters alone on his own side of the bed, because moving to the middle felt like agreeing to something. But the bench had been non-negotiable. Every off-shift hour, he had been on the bench, at the end where the transport approach lane was visible through the outer viewport, because Kessen's reach communications had been down, and the only information he trusted anymore was the kind he could see with his own eyes. Grunwald had tried, twice, to reassign the bench-adjacent conduit work to someone else so Ilias wouldn't have to watch people walk past him. He had told her he didn't mind being watched. He minded not watching. The fourth thing she noticed, and this was the one that made her sit down on the deck instead of the bench, because her legs had stopped agreeing to hold the rest of her up in a dignified position, was the small data slate wedged into the gap between the bench's armrest and the bulkhead. She knew that slate, it was hers. She had left it charging in their quarters, an old habit, personal logs she never sent anywhere, 3 years of them. "You read my logs," she said. It came out flatter than she meant it to. "I read the first one by accident. I was looking for your extraction schedule, and I opened the wrong file." He did not apologize for it, which she noted and filed, because Ilias did not apologize for things he had decided were true. "I didn't read the others by accident." "Why?" "Because on day 11, I needed to know what your voice sounded like when you weren't performing comm for a debrief. The logs are the only place you don't do that." He looked at the slate rather than at her while he said it, which was, for Ilias, the closest thing to a private moment he allowed himself in public. "I'm not sorry. I'd do it again." The station's rotation schedule arrived on her slate 2 hours after she'd finally showered, finally eaten something that wasn't ration paste, finally stopped smelling like recycled transport air. Extraction wing reassignment. Effective in 11 days. A different sector, a longer mission window this time, not 19 days. 60 if the estimates held, and estimates never held. She read it twice before she went looking for him. She found him on the bench. "I have to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to let me finish before you do the thing where you go very calm and start solving it like an engineering problem." "I already know," he said. "You don't know. You can't know it came through 2 hours ago. It's not even. Grunwald knows the duty roster before command does. He told me 40 minutes ago." He said it without any particular weight, the way he'd once explained a coolant leak to her, and she understood, watching him, that this was not him hiding the feeling. This was him having already spent 40 minutes with it before she walked up, and having already decided what he was going to do with it, which was apparently nothing visible. 60 days, she said. "I did the math already too." She had expected an argument. Not a loud one, Elias didn't do loud, but some version of the conversation people have when one of them keeps leaving and the other keeps staying. The conversation about whether staying is sustainable, whether 6 days that becomes 19 that becomes 60 is a pattern or an accident. Instead, he reached into the gap between the armrest and the bulkhead, past her data slate, and pulled out a second object she hadn't noticed. A requisition chit. Habitat transfer docking ring 4, the quarters directly adjacent to the outer viewport bench. "I put in for it on day 6, he said. "Back when I still thought 6 days meant 6 days, I decided that if I was going to keep doing this, I wasn't going to do it from 3 rings away. You don't even like this ring. You said the recyclers are too loud. They are too loud." He looked at the viewport, not at her, watching the black where the transport approach lane cut through the starfield. "I can hear the recyclers from bed. I decided I'd rather hear something loud from somewhere. I can see the ships coming in than hear something quiet from somewhere I can't." She didn't ask him to promise he'd be on the bench in 60 days. She had learned over 3 years that Elias didn't make promises about outcomes, only about what he'd do while waiting for them, which was, she'd come to understand, a more honest kind of promise than the other kind. What he said instead, the night before the transfer chit finished processing, standing in the new quarters with half his boxes still sealed, was smaller than a promise and somehow heavier. "I already asked Grunwald to keep the bench conduit assignment open," he said, "for after you leave." She didn't answer right away, because answering meant her voice would do something she wasn't ready for it to do in front of him. "You're already planning to sit there again," she said finally. "I never stopped planning to." He said it the way he said everything true and unremarkable to him and enormous to her, flat, certain, already 3 steps into a future she hadn't left for yet. 60 days isn't the number I'm counting. I'm counting the ones after that. She sat down on the edge of an unopened box, in a room that didn't feel like hers yet, and let herself believe, for the first time since the transport had cleared Kessen's reach, that 6 days and 19 days and 60 days were all, eventually, going to be the same number, which was, however long it took, followed by him on the bench, exactly where she'd left him.